There we go. All right. We'll wait a few moments, everyone, to get started. Let's see, I gotta fix the screen. So, my name is LaShawn Jenkins with the Notary Institution. And today's topic, we're going to go into how to set up your own business formation. Just some great information. I'm bringing someone else on. Her name is Stalin. I'm going to let her actually introduce herself. She's actually here. We're going to add her to the stream. There you go.
Hello.
Keep all right. So the floor is yours.
Okay, awesome. So I'm Thallen Brassel. I am an attorney and based out of Nashville, Tennessee. I've been here. I'm originally from Tennessee, but I started practicing law in New York, and so I worked on Wall Street for a few years in New York before moving back home. I went to Vanderbilt undergrad, which is why I'm here in Nashville. I went to Duke for law school, so a little bit of North Carolina love too.
Oh, okay.
But now I am a business attorney, and so I've been in business and tax throughout my career, doing it in some form or another. But I've worked with lots of corporations, from startup companies, entrepreneurial ventures, all the way up to Fortune 500 companies, publicly traded companies. So a lot of a variety in the type of businesses that I've supported. And so I've seen a lot in the life cycle of a business. So when people start companies, like how do you form a company and how do you set one up and get things going, all the way up to, how do you transition out of a business? How do you sell a company? How do you, leave a company to your children, succession planning and things like that. So I've seen a lot of different types of issues and questions arise in business, and so that's the area where I focus on now.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's a lot of moving pieces that you learning. I never even thought about how to exit outside of a business. I thought
Mm-hmm.
it maybe we just stop doing it. But that's why I just, wanted to bring on somebody who is an expert in setting up businesses, because a lot of notaries in this industry, they don't set up a business and they don't understand the importance of setting it up. They're just taking payments in their business, but it is very important that everyone set up some type of business structure.
Right. I agree. And even if it's not necessarily from a, am I breaking the law perspective, but more so just a legitimacy perspective with, just straightening up my camera here, legitimacy perspective from marketing and advertising. I feel like when when you're interacting with a company, for some reason, customers feel a little bit more, trust in you if you can say, okay, I'm, operating out of this name LLC or this name Inc. versus just in your own name. It feels a little bit more permanent. And it gives customers a little bit more security in dealing with you because they know that you've taken the time and the energy and, the money, the finances to put behind setting up an entity for your business versus just, kind of coming and going as you wish, or, what they call flying by the seat of your pants.
Right.
It seems like a little bit more established if you've taken the time to form a legal entity.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So how will a person know which one to choose? What kind of things do they look for
Okay.
on choosing a business form?
Right. So there are several different business types of business entities that you can form. What a lot of people don't know is that technically, once you start taking payments for anything that you're doing, once you start operating as a business, you're technically a sole proprietor in most states. And what that means is just basically that you're operating, you are running a business, you are accepting payments in exchange for doing some sort of work for people. It doesn't mean anything in terms of the state recognizing you as a separate entity from, as the business being a separate entity from you, the person. But in a lot of instances, it does give the general public a different avenue to kind of put you in terms of being able to interact with you. So there will be in most states some sort of laws around operating with someone who is a sole proprietor. But in essence, you haven't really done anything extra. You haven't created any extra protections for yourself. It's basically just you taking money in exchange for doing something for someone else. So a sole proprietorship is kind of, I guess the best way to put it is an automatic or a default. What most people choose to do when they're forming a business or setting up a business from a legal perspective is to either do an LLC or a corporation. Sometimes you'll see people do partnerships, but it's the typical ones are LLC and corporations. Now, corporations tend to have a lot of formalities. Corporations are great when you anticipate having a lot of people involved in the ownership of the entity, or if you eventually want to offer stock in the company, then corporation is the route to go. In most states, they have a lot of requirements around, annual requirements, annual meeting requirements, and it's just a lot of things to do to keep your corporation on and up. And so sometimes in some states they will be cheaper to form than LLCs, but because it's so much work on the back end to maintain it, most people kind of shy away from them. And then before I get into LLCs, I do want to raise a point. I've already said it several times, but I've been saying in certain states or in most states. And so what's key is that people either talk to a lawyer or, get familiar with the laws in their own states, because states govern the operation of businesses. And so business that you set up from a legal perspective will be governed by the laws of your state instead of like federal laws, which govern the whole United States together.
Oh, okay.
So it's really important for people to understand the laws in their particular state before they decide which one to do. So, but generally speaking, LLCs and corporations kind of operate the same across states. There's a lot of commonality within which structure you pick. So LLC, like I said, is the most popular one particularly for a business like notary, because it is simple to operate and to maintain. They tend to not be terribly expensive to form. With either, a lot of people choose to do it themselves. A lot of people can get an attorney who's willing to work with them like on a flat fee basis or not charge a lot of money in order to set it up. It provides protections for people outside of what you would get if you were just operating as a sole proprietorship on your own. So when I say protections, what it is that the LLC is a separate entity than you are. So you are an owner of the LLC, but you are not the LLC, if that makes sense. So
no, that makes perfect sense.
So a limited liability company, like I said, you can have one member or owner. It's called different things in different states, or you can have multiple ones. But either way, even if it's just you, it's still separate from you as a person. So that's great in the sense that you can separate, I don't want to say responsibility, but the business operates on its own. So while you're making the decisions, there is what they call a corporate veil or an entity veil in this, because it's not a corporation, that shields you from, like let's say the business takes out a loan, then that's the business's loan and not your loan. Now, sometimes you might be a personal guarantee on the loan for the business, particularly if you're just operating it by yourself, but it separates you. And so if for some reason someone sues the business for something that the business did that was wrong, they wouldn't be able to come after your personal assets, finances, because you are separate from the business. Now, there are a lot of caveats in that. So I don't want people to think, oh, I can just set up this entity and then go out and go crazy and let somebody sue the business and it's not me. Because there's a lot of reasons that a court or a judge could say, yeah, it was an LLC, but you did certain things which will allow us to now come after you. But generally speaking, it does give you a little bit more protection because it's an entity separate from who you are as a person. Another thing from a notary perspective is, I know notaries, you have certain requirements, licensing processes that you have to go through. And I want to say, to some extent, notaries do have to be personally liable for errors or omissions or things of that nature. And so, you have to make sure you check with the laws in your state, because sometimes there might be some things that you can do that, regardless of if you're operating within an LLC or not, you're still responsible for, just because that's how the notary rules are set up in your state.
Right. We actually have errors and omissions insurance that we purchase.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I won't go into the questions that we have questions for you.
Okay.
We have questions for you in the comments. So you probably can see them on the screen. So here's Soph. Is there a benefit of having a LLC or S corp?
Yes. So the benefit, of course, like I said, would just be the separation of you from the business. It would probably help you to streamline your accounting, your finances, your taxes, and things of that nature. S corp, the distinction there is in the taxation of it and how you're taxed as an individual, because in most corporations, the corporate entity is taxed separately from the people who own it. But if you do an S corp election, you can, or I should, let's step back. The LLC, if you're in an LLC, that's taxed. It's not taxed separately. You can combine your taxes with the LLC, or you can make this S corp election, which changes the way it's taxed. So again, your question is there a benefit? And so the benefit is being able to separate things out, handle the taxes, the finances separately from your own personal taxes, but still be able to associate the two. And then if you're asking the difference between an LLC versus an S corp and whether or not that will work for your particular situation, it's probably best to talk to a lawyer who you can share the details of what you have going on, how you would prefer to be taxed and things like that. And then they can help advise you between those two entities, or really making the S corp designation on an LLC.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good information. So, another question before I ask my question: can you use an existing LLC to run your notary business?
Can you use an existing LLC to run your notary business? That's kind of a loaded question.
I don't know. Maybe I'm assuming that they have another business and they want to run their notary business under that LLC. That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, that's what I think they're asking. And it's loaded in the sense of, I don't know what the existing LLC is being used for. Is it an active LLC? Is it an inactive LLC? Is it, what type of business were you running? Like, were you selling dresses in this LLC? Are you still selling dresses in this LLC, but you want to do the notary business in there too? In which case, if it's not something that kind of goes together, like sometimes, you'll have people who it's like a notary business and then something that goes along those same lines, and people do it all under one umbrella. So again, that's probably one that you should take to an attorney who you can kind of share the details with. But the thing about it is that LLCs are so simple to form. And if it's a business that you don't want to combine, if you don't want to have the taxes combined, if you're not using the same assets or resources, then it probably would be best to just set up a different entity for the notary business, so you can keep track of everything in there separately from what you're doing in the other business.
All right. So let me ask you a question. So someone wants to go, they want to set up a business. They need an LLC, or they don't know, but they need something. So how would they go about doing that? One, would you recommend an attorney, or can they just go online and do it themselves? Or should they go on the Facebook group? Because this is popular now. Go on the Facebook groups, and someone has a post say, "Hey, I'll do your LLC for $600."
Oh, and
That's what's happening now. That's what's happening now. So what how do a person go about actually setting it up?
Right. So I always advise people to do a little personal research so that you can know the ins and out of what you're asking someone to do for you. So, have an idea about what you think you want, but then be flexible to let someone who's a professional kind of guide you in the right direction. It's great when you can go to an attorney and say, hey, this is the type of business that I'm running. I am a notary, and I'm looking to form an entity. I think what I want is an LLC, but let me know if based on this, my personal situation, you feel like that's right for me. Like, I think that's a great way to go in to an attorney. And, it shows them that you know what you're talking about, that you've done the research, and it helps to kind of shape the representation in the sense that, they're not selling you something else just because they don't understand, because you haven't been able to articulate exactly what it is that you're doing. So start with doing the research yourself. Then seek out someone who you trust to help you out with it. A lot of people, like I said, go the route of, trying to do it themselves, and not to say that it can't be done. I would always say start with the Secretary of State office website in your state. They're going to have a lot of resources and a lot of information on there on how to, like, the technicalities of how to set it up. Where the attorney comes in, though, is letting you know if that's the right one you should be setting up. The website's going to tell you exactly how to do it, like write a check for this amount, send it to this, fill out this form. But an attorney will guide you in how you should do it in terms of which one to pick. And then after you have it set up, most LLCs have operating agreements. And so if it's just you tend to not, there isn't, it's not as critical to have this operating agreement. But in the event that you go into business with someone else, or like we talk about looking more long term, where you want to sell your business or bring someone else into your business or leave your business to someone else, then you do want an operating agreement that basically just sets out how things will operate within your business, and an attorney can help you to draft that. Like I said, a lot of attorneys will do this for a flat fee. Sometimes it'll be hourly, but for something that's as straightforward as truly setting up an LLC, it should be really a really simple and affordable process.
Okay, so someone asked about LegalZoom. So LegalZoom is like along the lines of them paying someone to set it up, right?
Right. So LegalZoom is kind of a hybrid between doing it yourself and having someone, an attorney, to help you. So, and I think LegalZoom actually has a couple levels at this point, where I think for a cheaper amount, it's kind of like the glorified Secretary of State, where they give you a little bit more guidance, where basically you use a form to input your information and it turns it into the filing that you need. And I think for a little bit more, you can maybe like chat with someone on LegalZoom or something like that. In order to get it done. Here's the thing, though. The Secretary of State is going to have a filing fee. And so that's going to be the same regardless of if you use LegalZoom or if you use an actual live attorney. I always, my personal opinion is to if you can get an attorney to be affordable and to work with you, it's always better if you can have a relationship with someone who you can just call up and ask a question, or, someone where, like, if you have questions about the document that's been produced, you can run through it with them and they can answer it. And it's more of a relationship than something that's just like an online website. But LegalZoom is a great resource if you don't have access to someone like that, in your community, or that's affordable for you. LegalZoom, I know tons of people who have used LegalZoom, who have good results from LegalZoom, but it often lacks the personal touch of an actual person who you're talking to and explaining what you're trying to do and where you want to go with your business. If you do want to add another line of work under your business, if you're talking to a person, they can help you plan for those things versus, you just checking boxes on LegalZoom. So it's good. If that's what you've got, then that's just what you've got.
Right.
But if you can get a person to help you, I would recommend that.
They recommend that. Okay, so it was one more question I seen on here that I wanted to ask, or maybe I had a question. Well, really, that's all. Well, that's actually all the questions. That's all I have. Thalen, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for doing this video,
Of course.
providing this knowledge, because this is knowledge that a lot of notaries need, especially with setting up the business. When they start setting it up, or if they should even start, because like you said, a person should start setting up the minute they start taking payments. They need to start setting up that business.
Yep,
So
exactly.
I
Because
appreciate you.
so much can go wrong even outside of just what you're doing as a notary, like the actual. So having that protection is always key, and it's often worth the extra money and the extra effort to get it set up.
Okay, awesome. So we're gonna head off. You enjoy your evening. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you watch this replay and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And Thaler, you know what? You can actually talk about your Lady and Lunch Club.
Oh, awesome. Yes. So I
Yeah,
also do Lady Lunch Club, which is an organization that provides career empowerment for professional women. And so prior to coronavirus and the pandemic, we had monthly live events. And so now we've switched to a digital platform where I do interviews with women who are doing awesome, phenomenal things in business and in entrepreneurship. And so we do those every Saturday on our Instagram Live at 12 noon Central. And so that that handle is at Lady Lunch Club on Instagram. And I would love for you guys to come visit me over there. And if you have any other questions as far as setting up a legal entity, feel free to just shoot me a question there.
All righty. Well, thank you guys. You have a good night, and everyone, y'all enjoy your night.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye bye.